Hey folks, this is Ardwulf, and welcome to another episode of Ardwulf Presents. We are coming to you today from Vanguard Saga of Heroes, and we have quite a bit to talk about as far as Vanguard news is concerned. Yesterday, which is July 3rd, according to when I'm filming this on the 4th, the details of the Vanguard free-to-play plan were announced. Now, those of us who have been paying attention, I did have talked about this before, know that a couple of months ago SOE announced that they were going to finally make Vanguard free-to-play, and the accompanying producer's letter that we saw yesterday indicated that they're in the home stretch on that. So I still think it's going to be 2 to 3 months, say August or September, by the time free-to-play launches. I'm hoping that it maneuvers well around the Guild Wars 2 launch, which is launching on August 28th, as that is going to occupy an awful lot of MMO gamers' time at that point. I'm just sailing my boat here, crossing a trunk line, that's what that was. Sailing my boat here around Kalia. I'll show you the map before I get to talking about this here. That's weird. According to this, I'm pointed north, but according to the mini-map, I'm pointed east, and according to my compass, I'm pointed east, so I'm going to trust the compass. Anyway, we finally got some details of the free-to-play plan yesterday. And they're pretty much in line with what we would anticipate based on seeing the other SOE free-to-play packages. There's basically a free plan, which is free, but you're able to buy stuff in the store, and a gold plan, which is basically the same old subscription plan that we're all familiar with. There is no, unusually for SOE, there is no intermediate silver package. Now, one of the things that they said about this was that they decided that they were just going to roll some of the benefits of gold into the free package, which they did. For example, free players will get 4 character slots. Those of us familiar with the other arrangements in EverQuest 2 would expect 2 character slots. Subscribers or gold members will get 12. Free players will get 2 bag slots. Gold players will get 4. I'm not going to discuss every single one of these details, but I will show you the bag slot impacts as I maneuver around this guy's rather large boat. I'll open up all my bags here. Okay, that's my main inventory bag, which is this bag right. Actually, it's the general inventory right here. Okay. Now, in addition to that, I have 3 bag slots plus a saddlebags. Now, the way I interpret the way this is going to work right now, I do not have big bags. This guy is a cloth worker, but he's not all that good at it, so he could only make these high-quality jute bags, which are, it looks like 14 slots, which are not bad. The bags can be arbitrarily large in Vanguard, so I think what you're going to have if you're a free player is you're going to have the general inventory, which is, looks like 50 slots. And then one of these bag slots open to you, and you'll probably be able to unlock those bag slots. And if the prices for doing so in EverQuest 2 are anything to go by, then that's going to be relatively inexpensive. In EverQuest 2, the bags are unlocked per character, per slot, but they only cost about $1.50 a piece, 150 station cash. So that's pretty cheap. So I'm pretty happy with that. In addition to that, the bags can be pretty big. You can get bags that are in the neighborhood of this 50-slot inventory bag without spending an inordinate amount of cash on the broker. Also, in addition to the 4 bag slots that you also have a saddlebag slot, which the way I interpret what we're seeing now is that everyone will have this slot open. And in addition to that, in your crafting panel, you have tool belts. 4 tool belts for that matter. You have a utility pouch, which, as you can see, even this is the starter utility pouch, so it's pretty decent size to hold crafting ingredients and stuff. You have a harvesting bag, which most people use this collectible sack. You can go down and pick this up from some gnomes somewhere, and you can put collectibles or harvesting gear in here. And you have this diplomacy pouch. This character actually doesn't have the diplomacy pouch. Or does he? No, he doesn't. So I can't show you that. But that's they start out about the same size as saddlebags do. And let's see, we got some turtle deep underwater there. Anyway, Where I'm kind of headed here, by the way, is this sort of reef out here. So I think we will start to tack our way to the northeast. So, further details regarding the free-to-play plan. Free players will be somewhat limited in their ability to use social emotes. They're going to be able to use say, tell, guild, and group. And that's kind of an issue given how group-centric Vanguard is. But on the other hand, if you look at Vanguard's... I just disengaged from my boat by pressing the U button. If you look at Vanguard's looking for group system here, I'm level 10, so let's we can look at anybody, and we'll say we'll look from level 8 to level 12. Let's see who's on right now. This is kind of an oddball time. So right now, according to this, I have 9 people on. Don't know if that's accurate. Hidden players don't show up in this, for example, and I know. For that matter, that some players just don't show up on this list, and I'm not sure why. So you can actually just send tells to any of these people if you're looking for a group, and that's generally how I've gotten groups together, and it works pretty well. So you can use the tell emote. That's not going to be that huge of a deal. You're not going to be able to receive you're not going to be able to send in-game mail as a free player. You will be able to receive it. For some reason, I don't know why, whenever I cross a chunk line on the boat, which I'm not particularly skilled at steering, by the way. Ooh, level 25. Don't piss around with him. Whenever I cross a chunk line, I immediately drop speed on the boat. I don't know why. So, anyway. Just kind of... Never really explored these islands before. I notice we have some level 20 flying dudes up top. That could make this potentially dangerous. I do have a depth limit on the boat, by the way. That's 250. The boat will despawn if I exceed that. The Tauthian Delta Zone, by the way, which is kind of a hub for like level, looks like 15 to 20-ish. I don't know if I'll aggro stuff on the boat. That's a good question. I am level 11 in crafting on this character, so I do take the death penalty. One of the other restrictions that is going to be levied on free-to-play players is quote-unquote common gear and items. Now, we're not really entirely sure what this means. It could mean, in the most uncharitable possible interpretation, and I hope this isn't correct, that you're limited to the very common, like just above vendor trash tier of gear, which is, I think, this green stuff. And that would be unfortunate. That would make the game kind of difficult after about level 15 to 20 or something like that. Ooh, a 4-dot. Whatever, that's a badass thing. Gonna sail up the river here. Now I'm curious to see if I'll aggro it, though. I'm only 15 meters away from it or so. It's a giant crab of some kind. So if that's in fact the impact of that gear limit, then that's going to be a problem as you continue to level. This, by the way, if you go between these two buildings at opposite sides of the river, there's probably going to be a tunnel under the river. That's a relatively common, neat little touch in Vanguard for that kind of thing to be present. So, like I said, that's kind of the biggest variable at this point. Free-to-play players will not have any restrictions on content or leveling. That includes any of the 3 spheres: adventuring, diplomacy, or crafting. Presumably, there will be no harvesting limits either. I assume gear will be limited, so there are like pieces of legendary diplomacy gear, for example, that I assume you won't be able to equip. They haven't said this, and this is also an assumption of mine, but there will probably be some kind of purchasable token that you can buy in the store that will let you equip that equipment. And for that matter, free players will have restricted broker access, which I think is going to mean that you can buy at but not sell on the broker. And there will probably be some kind of token that will let you do that as well. Now, as far as races and classes go, they've actually the selection available to free players is actually more open than I think probably some people anticipated. It's not quite as open as I would have made it, but they kind of met me halfway there, so I'm not entirely displeased with it. Races available to free players include the Thestran human and Halfling on Thestra, the Kaliathari and Mordevi humans on Kalia, and the Kojani humans and Half-Elves on Kojan, which means that there's 2 races available from each continent. And that's not such a bad selection. I tend to favor human or near human characters anyway, personally. So if you saw my character screen, you'd find that most of my characters are human. I got a couple of elves in there as well. But I mostly stay away from non-human races in MMOs, with the exception of dwarves, but the dwarves in Vanguard I think look stupid, so I haven't bothered to make one. Just they have an insufficient selection of available beards, which is problematic for dwarves. So moving along to the next item on the Vanguard free-to-play list are classes. Now this is where I thought that the way it was going to work, if it had closely mirrored the way it works in EverQuest 2, I thought it was going to be a kind of a serious problem. Vanguard's got a number of classes that have really unique and distinct mechanics behind them, and they also have some classes that are less interesting. The by-the-book approach would have been to make the Warrior, Sorcerer, Cleric, and Rogue the freely available classes, and make all the other classes pay to unlock. And I'm happy to say that they didn't do that. The Warrior, Sorcerer, Cleric, and Rogue are free players, but in addition, the Monk, the Disciple, and the Necromancer, all of which are relatively unique Vanguard-ish classes, those are also going to be available. Now, the other classes will be pay to unlock. I'm guessing that they'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 station cash, because that's the way it works in EverQuest and EverQuest 2. But those are one-time unlocks. Not such a big deal. Those of us who are former subscribers to Vanguard can rest assured that we will be able to play our existing characters. SOE has said outright this time, this is something that kind of slipped through the cracks when EverQuest 2 went free to play, and they had to kind of backtrack it in the first week, is that any existing characters at the time of the free-to-play conversion will be available. You won't have to pay to unlock them. I imagine that you will have to pay to unlock bag slots or equipped gear, because that's also the way it worked in EverQuest 2. So we've got a mixture of good and bad. I know that the SOE free-to-play model has its share of critics, but it really doesn't bother me all that much. It tends to favor casual to like middle-of-the-road players, as opposed to hardcore players. It's very difficult to play SOE's games on a really serious level under the free plan. But to my way of thinking, if you're going to be a serious player, well, maybe you ought to subscribe anyway. There's a quest I can get. Let's stop the boat. Stop the boat. Can I even back up? I can't even back up. So let's. Hop in the water. Some kind of giant? Or a golem? Or what? See, this is the awesome thing about Vanguard, is it's a giant purple genie or something like that. I'm totally grabbing that quest. Where am I? I'm in the call chunk here. I would anticipate that this... I would anticipate that none of the mobs here are especially undefeatable. I've never even seen this part of this chunk, to be honest about it. That's the cool thing about Vanguard is every time I play it almost, unless I'm really going out of my way to go over well-explored sections of the world, I always find new stuff. If I hadn't decided to take my boat out and on this random cruise, I would never have seen that guy. I think I'll spin us down to Agram as well, since I've got some more to say before we call this video. If I seem a little vocally sluggish today, it's because I just got up. It is July 4th. Mrs. Ardwulf is at work, and I find myself in need of talking about this news. One of the other things that they mentioned in the FAQ, and if I haven't said it already, and I'm pretty sure I have, all this stuff will be linked in the notes below, is that Vanguard will continue to receive content and updates, which is a pretty important thing for people who've been following Vanguard for any length of time. They know that Vanguard had been all but officially abandoned by SOE. They had a development team when they took it over from Sigil, and they gradually just pulled people off, mostly to EverQuest 2, as far as we can tell. But we've got an actual development team now that consists of more than one or two people, and we're going to see some new content probably around the time that free-to-play launches. We have seen a number of things change in the last couple of weeks. One of the things that they did that I'm not especially thrilled about is that they quote-unquote consolidated starting areas. So basically, instead of the 13 or whatever it was different starter areas you had in Vanguard before, now there's like 4. There's one on each continent, and then the Isle of Dawn. Now, I wrote a blog post about this, which I guess I'll also put in the notes below. And I do see the reasons why that seems like a good idea. That said, I think having a bunch of different starter areas is a big asset for an MMO. It lends replayability to the game. It lends variety to the game. And some of those starter areas were really, really cool. The Orc and Goblin starter area, for example, had a really cool hook at the beginning where you start off as a slave who has just escaped on like a slave barge, and basically you have nothing but a shiv, and you escape from the barge and go make contact with the orcs that are on shore, and it's kind of cool. I really liked the sort of redemption type of thing that you got with the Kojani, and I think the half-elves, although I always played through with a Kojani, in their starter area, where you start as like a servant of the evil empire, and you kind of are forced to walk this road of redemption, and then you land somewhere else in the Kojani Isles. So I thought that was really cool. I'm not sure. I haven't made a character since they consolidated it, but it sounds like that's going to be the default starter zone for Kojani characters now, which, you know, that's okay. I see why they did it. It certainly will allow them to concentrate developer resources in fewer areas, and that's probably a good thing in the long run. But I'm going to miss those older starter areas. Now, they didn't remove anything either, as far as I can tell, so there's nothing stopping a Kaliathari character, for example, from starting off in Cliffs of Gilgad, leaving immediately, and going to Lomshir and start doing the starter content there. I don't see that that's impossible, although I haven't tried it. So free-to-play is approaching for Vanguard. Overall, none of the details of the plan I don't find like super surprising or anything, so I can't say that I'm like disappointed. I know some people don't really like the Sony free-to-play plan, but it really doesn't bother me very much. When I'm playing these games seriously, I am happy to subscribe, and when I am playing them casually, then I am happy to not have to pay a subscription fee, even if there are some restrictions on the characters at that time. One of the interesting things is that the free-to-play plan is going to restrict free players away from a number of aspects of Vanguard. There's a fishing system, for example. Free-to-play players will not be able to use the fishing system. I don't imagine that that's going to upset a whole lot of people. I personally despise fishing in MMOs. I think it's an asinine waste of time, but that may be because no one has made an entertaining minigame out of it. And I haven't actually tried Vanguard's fishing, so I know there's some videos. Jeremy's done some videos on fishing, so I will check that out at some point, since I am a subscriber and plan to continue to be. We've got the Agram docks here, so we'll pull in. The housing system is also, free players will not be able to participate in the Vanguard housing system. I think there's a very good reason for that. That reason being that Vanguard's housing is open world. So if they really kind of have, whoops, landed in the water. Oh well, do it the easy way. If they had allowed every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's a free player to have a house in the open world, taking up a lot in the open world, then that would be problematic. Agram here is kind of a hub in some respects. It's a city downriver from Khal, and it's kind of an area where you can tell they had other plans for that never really materialized. It is still a hub. There's some crafting and that type of stuff, and some diplomacy quest lines that bring you here. It's got all the city type amenities. It's got a bank, it's got a broker, it's got crafting stations and all that business. And there's housing not too far away either. So housing is going to be something that's free-to-play players will not be able to have. Apparently buried somewhere is if you're a subscriber, a gold member, and if your account lapses to a free account, then your housing will remain accessible, but you won't be able to pay the rent. So, I've never been in parts of Agram, by the way. I've actually only been down here a couple of times, to be honest, since I don't really have a higher level adventure or diplomacy or crafting character that had to come down here for anything. Free-to-play players will also be restricted from participating in brotherhoods and caravans, which are sort of an experience sharing mechanism. To be honest, I've never used either of them, so I'm not sure which one is which, but I believe brotherhoods, basically you can put characters in a brotherhood, and whenever one character gains experience, some of that experience gets shunted off to the other characters in the brotherhood, so they should always stay roughly even, and characters who are lower level will tend to catch up. How a caravan works, I believe, is that you can designate a player as the leader of a caravan and then log off. And the leader of the caravan can go somewhere, and when you log back in, you will appear at that player's location. So it was kind of an early idea as far as getting around the huge, vast world of Vanguard. Less necessary now that the Riftway network is in place, to be honest. Even the continent-to-continent boats aren't around anymore, actually. That's my boat right there. There used to be boats, much like you see in WoW or in EverQuest 2. They're still around in those games, where you would get on the boat and it would sail off, and you'd get off at a different continent. There were some technical problems, I believe, associated with those, so they got rid of them. And now people just use the riftways. So travel's still kind of a big deal in Vanguard. It's not really trivial to get certain places, but it's not a hugely burdensome grind to travel from place to place either. Let's get back on our boat. I really like having a boat. Actually, it's kind of awesome. I could actually take this river all the way down to the southern areas here. All those areas are way above my level, so I'm not going to do that today. Maybe someday with my other character who's a little higher level. This guy's only level 10, so he's a psionicist, which is another one of the neat classes of Vanguard. It's a dedicated crowd control specialist. Does fairly good DPS as well at this level anyway. You can pretty much lock mobs down. It's like other classes like this, like the Illusionist in EverQuest 2. It's kind of tricky to play. It's one of the trickier classes, but it's also got a kind of interesting mechanics to it. So I don't know if they redid some abilities too to give you fewer abilities and less confusing abilities under level 10. So I'm not sure if I still have that ability available or not. Basically, when you got this one psionicist ability, you have the ability to join the global psionicist only chat channel, because you are mentally linked with all the other psionicists in the world, which is kind of cool. Nobody really does classes like that anymore, where you just have this completely, not incredibly useful, but just neat class feature that nobody really bothers with anymore. Everybody's too busy trying to be the most popular kid on the block or to compete with the most popular kid on the block. Vanguard's really not. There was a trailer as well, which I posted on the blog a while ago. On YouTube. I may link that in the notes below as well. I'm pretty excited about the idea of Vanguard going free to play. I'm playing it now, so it's not like, oh, I'll be able to play Vanguard again now that it's free. But the important point is that I'll be able to. There are times in my personal schedule where I'm really not able to justify spending $15 a month to play an MMO. And free-to-play games have been a godsend for that reason. When I have the time to sink a bunch of hours a week into an MMO, I can pay the $15. And when I don't, I can play occasionally and not have to pay and be perfectly happy with that. One of the other things I ought to mention that free-to-play players are going to be restricted in is the size of the quest journal. Right now, you have the ability to have 50 quests in your quest journal, and those are spread out between adventuring, crafting, and diplomacy. I don't know if work orders count or not, but probably you're only going to have one work order at a time in your journal, so I'm not sure that that's at all important. Free players are going to be limited to 15 quests in the quest journal. Now, I don't think that's hugely burdensome. I don't think it's a game-busting problem or anything like the gear issue is potentially. However, it does mean with the volume of quests in Vanguard, particularly with the 3 spheres, and with the huge size of the world, where sometimes it's just like, hey, I've got this quest sitting in my quest log. I just can't get to it right now because I'm on some other continent in the hinterlands. You're going to have to very carefully manage that kind of thing as a free player with limited to 15 quests. And you're going to probably have to be very careful about picking up. It's very easy to pick up large numbers of diplomacy quests, for example. Just walking around. If you're like a level 5 or 10 diplomat, which is not terribly high, it's very easy to just walk around and pick up dozens of diplomacy quests. So you're going to have to pay pretty close attention to that. Vanguard free players under the new plan are not going to have any kind of content restrictions. This is also typical of the SOE models. And this is kind of the trade-off between the weird gear restrictions and the currency cap restrictions and all those other things that you can't get around. You can't even buy your way around them. But this is kind of the trade-off, is that there's no restrictions on content. EverQuest 2 is like this, and for the most part, you still have to buy the expansions. You still have to buy Destiny of Velius to get the Destiny of Velius content. I really hate this message. I wish you could turn it off. I actually can't wait till this dude goes away, which that's supposed to happen, I think. So just with the amount of content available in Vanguard, you're going to have the ability to access all of it. There's not going to be any restrictions. And to me, that's SOE's not a charity. I mean, you can't expect them to give the whole game away for free and not even try to make any money. So for me, I find that the way EverQuest 2 works, and this model is pretty similar, a little bit more liberal, certainly in terms of character slots and races and classes and stuff like that. I find this equitable as well. There's already complaining about it, of course, because we're talking about MMO gamers who don't have anything to do other than complain. Looks like we have a lot of boats in the Kal Harbor at the moment. It's interesting when that happens. This is something I pointed out last time I sailed through the harbor in Kal. Kal's kind of a hub, so you tend to see this more here than anywhere else. But there's a lot of boats here, and these are all not only player-owned, but player-crafted ships. And there's not going to be any restrictions on those for free players either. Now, let's put the boat away. I don't like to leave it out, cluttering up the harbor, as it were. Now, certain things in crafting and diplomacy are going to be difficult to accomplish with serious gear restrictions. Like I said, you might be able to get around those with tokens off the in-game store, but there's no real details available about that yet, so we're just speculating. But there are, for example, like the galleon, which is the largest class of ship, which I want to say that this huge ass thing with the big elephant head on the front is a galleon. You need to harvest materials to make that ship that come from one of the end game raids. So, and I want to say that's got to be the Kojani galleon. Actually, there's 3 different styles, one for each continent. This is true of housing and armor as well, by the way. And for boats, there's 3 different tiers. There's oh geez, what size is my boat? It's the sloop, the caravel, and the galleon. And the galleons are the biggest ones. I'm perfectly happy with my little sloops right now. It's been a long time in character goal for me to get a boat. So, and you can build boats at, I think, crafter level 16, something like that. That's when you can start working towards that. And the small boats are not terribly difficult to build. Yeah, here in Kal, there's actually boats have special crafting stations. There's actually Kal is one of the places that has those crafting stations. So I've been very rambly in this video, so I appreciate your patience for having watched it, but I think I'm going to wrap it up now and spare you any further discussion. There will be substantial discussion of this on the blog. I've already got a blog post up about it, so feel free to check that out. In the notes below, you will find a link to that blog. It's at ardwulfslair.wordpress.com. You will also find links to add me to your social networking circles on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. So do those. I am especially... I don't post a lot of gaming stuff on Facebook, but I do on Twitter. So if you're apt to follow my gaming type feeds, then by all means circle me there. You can circle me on Google Plus as well, and all the other things that I talked about that warrant notes are also linked in the notes below. So check those things out. I hope you will be joining me in Vanguard later this summer when it goes free to play, and hope that there'll be a big flood of players, and this game will get the attention that it deserves finally. I am Ardwulf. Thanks for watching.